Today is the first of our labs on machine vision. We learned earlier in the lecture videos that sensors are used to give our robots two different kinds of information. One kind of information is information about the robot's own self or its own state. The other kind of information is information about its environment. Now, if you think back to the very beginning of class, in our Introduction to Robotics, we learned that we are often building robots for the purpose of doing things that would otherwise or are currently being done by humans. Now, as humans, we get a large portion of our information about our environment through our eyes. We get our information as visual information. This gives rise to a field of robotics called machine vision, or sometimes called computer vision, where we try to get information from a camera. In this first lab video, I'm going to be walking you through how to set up a camera and read the image in MATLAB. So for this lab today, you need to have a webcam like this, and you need to have this threaded rod like this, and you also need to have a board with a hole for mounting your camera. So to begin with, take your webcam and take your threaded rod, the end where it has two nuts of two different sizes on the end, and go ahead and attach this to your camera as I'm doing here. Attach it nice and tight, as tightly as you can. Then, secondly, we're going to attach this to the board. So to do that, make sure that the other end of your threaded rod has one nut on it, and then turn your board and put the threaded rod through the hole in the board like this, and we're going to try and put it through far enough that there are some threads here to which we can attach a second nut. When we get it through far enough, I'm going to screw the other nut onto the bottom. And you want to tighten this on as tightly as you can, and when you're done it should look like this. You have a nut on the top and a nut on the bottom. Then set your board back up. And then I'm going to bend the camera down so that it is looking down at the board. So your final setup should look like this. Once you get that, go ahead and plug in the USB cable to a USB port on your computer. When you plug in the camera to a USB port, your computer will probably spend some time installing some driver software. Wait for that to finish before you move on. Now open MATLAB. You always want to make sure that you plug in the camera before opening MATLAB so that MATLAB will recognize the hardware that you have plugged in. Now create a new script. We're going to start by making sure that our camera is recognized. In the command window, type in IMAQHWINFO. This command stands for Image Acquisition Hardware Information. Basically, it pulls your computer to see what kinds of hardware you have connected to the computer. After you hit enter, one of three things will happen. One possibility is that you could get an error If you get an error here, that means you're using a version of MATLAB that does not have the image acquisition toolbox installed. You will have to go to My Apps and install the MATLAB version for engineering students. Another possibility is that you could get a warning as an output saying that you have no adapters installed, and it will have the word Support Package Installer underlined. In that case, click on the underlined text where it says Support Package Installer, and when you do, you will get a window like this that allows you to install from the internet. Then you'll want to scroll down till you find OS Generic Video Interface and click Next to install this update. However, in my case, when I type iMac HW info, I don't get a warning or an error. If you don't get a warning or an error, then you're ready to go on to this next step. What we want to do is make sure that in this installed adapters, we have an item that's called WinVideo, or if you're using a Mac, you have an item that's called Mac Video. We want to pull this adapter and see what kinds of hardware are connected to it. Type in iMac HW info, and then in parentheses and single quotes, WinVideo or Mac Video if that's the adapter that you have, and hit enter. Here we're given some information about this adapter. The thing we're most interested in is the device IDs. You should have one device ID listed here for each webcam that is connected to your computer. So if you've already connected the webcams that we're using in class to your computer, you should have at least one device ID here. If you also have a built-in webcam in your laptop, you will probably have another device ID that is connected to that camera. I have two webcams connected to my computer right now, and so that's why I have two device IDs. I don't know which one is the one that I want to use, so I'm going to check each of these. I'm going to hit the up arrow so that the command I last typed in will appear, and then I'll put a comma and I'll type 1 to find out some information about device ID number 1. I hit enter, and I see that this device name is called Manycam Virtual Webcam. That's not the name of the webcam type that we're using in class, so that tells me that device ID 1 was not the correct selection. So I'm going to hit the up arrow to get that command again, and I'm going to type 2 in instead and hit enter. Here, this camera is called USB 2.0 camera. This is the correct name for the cameras that we're using in class, and also this default format here is the correct default format. So that tells me that in my case, device ID number 2 is the correct one. You have to figure out for your computer which device ID is the USB 2.0 camera. Once you figure that out, go down to where it says supported formats and copy the supported format that is the highest resolution, 640 by 480, and copy that. Now, up in your script, type in vid equals video input WinVideo or Mac Video if that's your adapter name. Then the number of the correct ID, in my case it's 2, but for you it might be 1 or 3 or something else. and then paste this format that you just copied and then on the next line type in preview vid. When you click run, you will be required to save the file. It'll take a little while for this to execute, and then you should get a live image from the camera that you've set up. So we can see in my live image, these are the 4 holes where we mount the servo. I can check to see if it's correct by waving my hand underneath it to see if I've got the correct camera. This live image is a preview image from your camera, and you should note that anytime you run your MATLAB script again, you're going to have to make sure to close this preview window before you run code. Otherwise, you'll get an error when you try to run the program again. So once you have this live image, we're going to make some marks on the board that we can use to help us explore this image. Take a red marker and draw a shape. I'm going to draw a red square, approximately a square. Then I'm going to take a blue marker and I'm going to draw a circle. I'm drawing different shapes so that as we process this image, we can identify which shape is which color, even when we're looking at the image in black and white or in a grayscale image. So I'm also going to take green and I'll draw a green triangle. So now I have 3 colors. I guess also I'm going to take a black marker, and with the black marker I'm just going to draw a single line. So right now in this image we're getting a live video feed. I'd like to capture a single image and take a look at what that image looks like mathematically. So close your preview window. After the preview vid line, I'm going to add a line to pause for 3 seconds. This will give my camera time to adjust the light level before we capture a single image. Then I'm going to create a variable called image and set it equal to get snapshot from vid. After I get the image, I would like to show the image. We use the command imshow. I'll go ahead and click run. The preview window will open, wait for 5 seconds, and then we'll take a snapshot and show the snapshot. Now you'll notice that this snapshot has its colors all mixed up. The square looks like it's blue, the circle looks maybe teal instead of blue, black has become some other color as well. We need to add something to our code here to get our colors to show up correctly. The reason why this is happening has to do with this format that we put in. These cameras work on a format that's called YUY2. YUY2 is a color space that's different than the RGB color space. RGB represents colors with 3 numbers, a value for red, a value for green, and a value for blue. YUY2 works differently. In this kind of a color space, one of the values is for brightness and 2 of the values are for color. So if we want to see this image show up correctly, we need to convert the color space to RGB. Here's how we do that. Right after we create the variable vid to hold our video, we're going to set for vid the value of returned color space, and we're going to set that to RGB. Now let's try this again. This time our captured image shows up in the right colors. Once you get this, you're good to go, and you can move on to the next video.